This short clip is to try and give you some tips around recruitment of patients into COVID-19 trials, because we recognise that in COVID-19 issues, particularly around consent for more complex trials, it can be challenging. We've invited Dr. Mark Yates to come and talk to us. Mark is a clinical research fellow at King's and has been a frontline member of staff throughout the COVID pandemic, and in particular has recruited a great number of patients to clinical trials.
So Mark, as James has just told us, you've been busy on the wards at King's College Hospital in recent weeks, recruiting to COVID-19 trials. What's your experience been so far?
So since the COVID-19 pandemic hit London, King's College Hospital established a clinical trials group, which I've been a part of. And every morning we centrally meet and identify patients suitable for recruitment to the studies. It's been very successful so far. We've recruited over 130 patients to date at Denmark Hill. And it's been very fast-paced and rewarding to get patients into these trials.
So what have you seen as the main operational challenges in these trials?
So practically, one of the hardest things is the donning and doffing of PPE every time you go to a ward space and in to see a patient as well. Not only is there's a time burden attached to this, but also consenting a patient where they can't see your full face, it has its own challenges. One of the other challenges is patients are regularly being moved around with cohorting of wards. And one thing we found on occasion here is because of the fast-paced nature of COVID-19 and our desire to get to patients as quickly as possible, is we have at times gone to patients before they even know that they're swab positive. So we've had to not only consent them for the study, but also break to them that they have COVID-19, which is obviously a challenging conversation in itself.
And before you actually consent the patient, you presumably contact the medical team who are supervising medical care. How does that interaction work at King's?
We've worked really hard to develop a collaborative approach to recruitment at King's College between the research teams and the clinical teams. So typically, if I had found a patient that I'd identified that was suitable for a study, I'd go to that ward that the patient was on and I'd go and speak to the consultant or the registrar that was looking after that patient, get their view on whether they felt the patient was suitable or not, and then make a decision on who was best to approach the patient. Lots of our key clinicians are signed up to our delegation logs, so are able to consent themselves. And it's not only been the research teams that have been identifying patients suitable for trials, we've had clinicians flagging patients to us, which I think really indicates that our system has worked well and has shown that we've had good clinician buy-in.
And Mark, when you're sitting down describing the study to the patient, what are the sorts of questions that the patients or their relatives ask you about?
Well, being diagnosed with COVID-19 is obviously a time of high anxiety. There's lots of media attention around COVID-19 at the moment, and I think there's perhaps a relatively low understanding that most people get better, most people do recover from COVID-19, so there's understandably a lot of anxiety around that. Despite the fact there are no licensed treatments, people are still nervous about taking something that is unlicensed. And particularly specific to COVID-19, one question that we've had raised a lot from relatives is, oh, my mother, father, brother is too old for a clinical trial, why are you approaching them? And that's difficult because we know for COVID-19 that older people are more severely affected. So we are particularly interested in including those in our trials. So that's what I try and explain to relatives and patients and say that the age is not a limiting step for entrance into trials. It's a benefit. It's a reason why we are going after or targeting these people.
And Mark, some of these patients are pretty unwell, and so I'm just wondering whether for those whose capacity may have been lost, what's your approach for taking proxy consent?
So this is a challenging area to deal with. So the first thing I do is I'd seek to verify the capacity of the patient myself, and I think that's really important to do. So I'd liaise with the clinicians, but I would seek to verify their capacity. And then once I'd done that, what I'd usually do is seek the next of kin, and I'd speak to them over the phone initially, and I'd get their initial thoughts on the study in question. If they're provisionally happy to move forward, what we'd do is we would email them the patient information sheet, give them some time to absorb on that, ask if they wanted any other family members to be sent a copy as well. And then after we'd given them, say, half a day or maybe a day to absorb the information, we'd give them a call back and have a three-way conversation with myself as a member of the trial team, and then an independent clinician who is not on any of the delegation logs for the study to act as a legal representative for the signing of the consent form if the relative is happy to go ahead after and we've answered all questions that they have.
And finally, you mentioned the challenges of the PPE that you have to wear and these sorts of safety precautions. How have you found maintaining a safe environment for you and the staff that you're working with?
Another challenging area, we don't want to expose people unnecessarily and we don't want to waste PPE. So we try and limit the number of people that go into a room to consent a patient. When we've been going in the past, when we first started our trials, we were going in with paper consent forms. And so then we were taking those paper consent forms out of the room. For the tactic trial, what we're going to be doing is doing scans of the consent forms, so there will be no physical material leaving the room after we've been in. And that we think will limit the amount of material that we're taking out and reduce the risk to our trial team.